billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. We shall start the program with the recitation of Holy Quran by Ali Manji, followed by Hadisi Qissa by Yasir Merali, and then lecture in English by Shaykh Anwer Jaffer. Wal Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. وآتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل ألا تتخذوا من دوني وكيلا ذرية من حملنا مع نوح إنه كان عبدا شكورا. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. وآتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل ألا تتخذوا من دوني وكيلا ذرية من حملنا مع نوح إنه كان عبدا شكورا سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير وآتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلناه هدى وآتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل ألا تتخذوا من دوني وكيلا ذرية من حملنا مع نوح إنه كان عبدا شكورا وقضينا إلى بني إسرائيل في الكتاب وقضينا إلى بني إسرائيل في الكتاب لتفسدن في الأرض مرتين لتفسدن في الأرض مرتين ولتعلن علوا كبيرا وصدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله وآله الأطهار على رسول الله وآله الأطهار. سورة الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أماه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أماه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء، ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه. يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء، فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيت وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنكم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا رب أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبت الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبيه إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبيه يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيه واصطفاني بالرسالة نجية. ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيه واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيه، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. الله. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat. May I request you to please move forward so that we have space for the people who are arriving late. Bal Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat. Muhammad wa Ali. Bismillah, Shaykh.
الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام وتحيته والإكرام على رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. اللهم صل على محمد. والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله، ببركة الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On this auspicious event of Mi'raj and Al-Isra', and of course Al-Mab'ath, may Allah bless you and your families, may Allah bless you marhumeen, accept your hajat and your amal during these favorable months, inshaAllah. When we speak about Mi'raj, when we speak about Isra', the night ascension, and when the Holy Prophet ascended towards the heavens, you find that within the narration it also corresponds to the revelation of the Holy Quran. Yawm al-Mab'ath is the day when the Holy Prophet was inaugurated with prophethood. Now, when it comes to the revelation of the Holy Quran, you find that this is also in correspondence to Laylatul Qadr. So what exactly happened on Yawm al-Mab'ath, on the day of the inauguration of the Holy Prophet? Likewise, what happened on Laylatul Qadr? When you refer to our narrations, you find that some parts of the Quran were revealed on this night, Yawm al-Mab'ath, but they were also revealed on the night of Qadr as well. Now, what the intricate discussions are, that's for you to go and research and find out what happened on this day and what happened on the night of Qadr. What was the time frame or the time difference between the two incidences? And of course, what were the responsibilities of the Holy Prophet? Sallallahu alayhi wa alih. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. This in itself is a separate discussion, which is not something that I want to focus on tonight. In tonight's discussion, I want to focus on the magnitude and the profundity of the Holy Quran, which is of course explained by Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam within Nahjul Balagha. And what's interesting is that when you speak about the Quran, when you speak about its revelation, when you speak about the Holy Prophet, when you turn to some of the narrations, it's impossible to not include Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam as well. It's as if part of the formula, the Imam is very much within it. When you speak about the message, when you speak about the messenger, you have to also speak about the guardian of the message. And there's a number of different examples. So let me introduce some examples. Just a few weeks ago, we celebrated the wilad of the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam, we know he was born within the Kaaba, isn't it? He was born within the Kaaba, which is Masjid al-Haram, the most sanctified place on this earth. And he was martyred in Masjid al-Kufa, which is also very much holy and sanctified. Is there a relationship between the two? Now, as we see, these two places are completely separate. Yes, they're separate countries. Is there a relationship between the two? Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, he strikes a comparison between the two. He says that there was a time when the earth was created. Allah commanded Jibra'il, he said, Ya Jibra'il, collect 4 earths or 4 sands or 4 clays from 4 different locations, 2 of which were from Safa and Marwa. One was from Tur Sina and one was from Jabal as-Salam. Now when you look at these 4 places, Jabal as-Salam is Kufa, the area or the district of Kufa. When you look at these 4 places, they all have something in common, and that is that they can all be attributed to one of the Ulul Azm. So Safa and Marwa, it's in relation to Nabi Allah Ibrahim alayhi salam, and of course the final prophet of Islam. With regards to Tur Sina, it's in reference to Nabi Musa alayhi salam. You can also include Nabi Isa alayhi salam, because in that district, you're talking about Palestine, Jerusalem, it's all part of the same region in that time. And of course, when it comes to Jabal as-Salam, this is in reference to Nabi Allah and Nuh alayhi salam. So the flood and everything began in Kufa and it ended in Kufa, and the ark dismounted in Kufa. So you find that these 4 places can all be attributed to Ulul Azm. Jibra'il gathered the 4 sands, and through it he created the holy Kaaba. So here, according to this particular narration, Imam Baqir alayhi salam explains that there is a strong relationship, a strong correlation between the Kaaba and Masjid al-Kufa. Is it a coincidence that the Imam was born within the Kaaba and he was martyred in Kufa? They both have a very deep, striking connection. In another narration, when we speak about Al-Isra, Al-Ma'raj, Shaykh al-Tusi in his Tahdhib al-Akram mentions this narration. He says that when the Prophet was taken towards the heavens, as he's going over the lands, he passes by a particular place. Jibra'il stops and he says, Ya Rasulullah, do you know where you are? He says, Ya Rasulullah, you are standing before Masjid al-Kufa. This is a place of kathir al-khayri wa azimat al-barakah. It's a place which is, there's a lot of good within it. There's an abundance of goodness that can be found and derived in this place. And of course, the magnitude of the barakah and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah then says, Ya Jibra'il, allow me to dismount and recite 2 rak'ah salah in it. Within Kufa, Masjid al-Kufa, we have one of the maqam which is known as Daqqatul Ma'raj, isn't it? It's the place where the Prophet recited his 2 rak'ah salah. So you find that when we speak about the movement of the Prophet, when you speak about some of the miraculous events that took place in his life, it is part and parcel connected with Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. It's as if he is part, He's infused with the whole formula of Islam, the message, the messenger, and of course the one who guards the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. I'll give you another example when it comes to the revelation of the Holy Quran. When it comes to the revelation of the Holy Quran, within Nahj al-Balagha, the Imam mentions, he says, I was there alongside the Holy Prophet. He says that we were there when ara nur al-wahi wa risala. On that specific night, I saw wahi, I saw revelation, and I saw the message being delivered. Ashammu rihat al-nabuwa. And I could smell the fragrance of nabuwa. لَقَدْ سَمِعْتُ رَنَّ. And I heard someone crying and screaming. I heard someone moaning in agony, in despair. حِينَ نَزَلَ الْوَحْيُ. When the revelation was being revealed. So I turned to the Holy Prophet. I said, Ya Rasulullah, مَا هَذِهِ الرَّنَّ. Who is this person? What is this cries and screams and moans that I can hear? Upon which the Prophet replies, he says, هَذَا الشَّيْطَانِ. This is the cries of shaitan. Indeed, he has now entered a state of despair. So all of a sudden, there's a sense of authority that is being delivered to the Holy Quran. Because of the power that this Quran has, it's as if shaitan has lost all hope in misguiding mankind. He says, then ya Ali, innaka tasma' ma asma' wa tara ma ara, illa annaka lasta binabiyyan. He says, you can hear what I can hear, you can see what I can see, except that you are not a prophet, walakinnaka waziri. Instead, you are my successor. So you have all of these different instances where the Imam is very much part and parcel of the movement of the Prophet's message. He's part of the Prophet's revolution in reviving spirituality within the nation and of course in expansion to the rest of the world. There's one particular narration within Nahj al-Balagha where the Imam begins to characterize the Holy Quran. And he begins to speak about the profundity that the Quran has in itself by nature. And he begins this discussion of how we should develop a relationship with the Holy Quran. And there are 4 things that he mentions. So let's go through them one after the other. With regards to the nature of the Holy Quran and how we should approach the Holy Quran, he says, وَتَعَلَّمُوا الْقُرْآنِ فَإِنَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْحَدِيثِ. Learn the Holy Quran, for it is the fairest of discourses. It is the best of discourses. تَعَلَّمُوا الْقُرْآنِ. Learn the Holy Quran. Now what does that mean, learning the Holy Quran? You know, in our culture, in our societies, we send our kids to the madrasa, they learn the Quran, they're taught how to read the Quran. Some of us emphasize on memorization, so our children memorize the Holy Quran. That relationship starts from a very young age, doesn't it? That we adopt an affinity with the Holy Quran, learning the Arabic language, how to read, and so on and so forth, so that we can interact with the Holy Scripture, with the divine book. When you look at the traditions amongst the Ahlul Sunnah, they begin or they emphasize much more on the memorization of the Holy Quran. When you look at their version of the Hawzat, the Darul Ulum, and you can find many within Leicester, within Birmingham, within Bradford, so on and so forth, you find that whoever enters these systems, part of the curriculum is that they have to memorize the Holy Quran, let alone forget reading. They have to memorize the Holy Quran as students of ad-Din. Now, of course, there's the emphasis behind Taraweeh so that they can facilitate these services for the Mu'mineen and the Muslimin and so on and so forth. So they emphasize greatly with regards to memorization. There's a very interesting paper that was published last year by a doctor by the name of Issam Ayyad from the University of Qatar. And he looked at the whole dimensions and the paradigm of memorization. Why does it have so much importance within the Muslim tradition? And what he did was, part of the research that he conducted, he went through history and he looked at how memorization was dealt with and interacted within the formative years of Islam. So we're talking about within the 1st century after Hijrah, during the times of the A'immat al-Athhar. So we're talking about during the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th Imam alayhim salam's time. Part of his research, he came to the understanding, and of course there are other researches to show this, even when you refer to some of the ancient books, he says that children were not formally taught. In fact, children began their formal education from the age of 6 onwards. At least they were 6. 7, was preferable? When you refer to Al-Ghazali, for example, who is held in high regards amongst the Sunni tradition, very, very high regards, in his Ihya Ulumuddin, he says that a child should not be taught from the age of, until he has turned the age of 7, or he or she has turned at the age of 7. 7 onwards, that's when you begin to teach them. Now, of course, our society is very different. We start even earlier on. But it is what it is. My intentions are to see how Islam was dealt with, how education was dealt with at that specific time. So they would formally teach the child from the age of 6 onwards. When they would enter the school, memorization was very much rampant and it was very much part of the curriculum. Alongside memorization, reading and writing, mathematics, the sciences that existed at the time, logic, this was all part of the curriculum. But what's important is that the child would not begin their education until they turned 6 or at least 7. What's interesting is this was part of the society at the time. This was a common theme within the society at the time. So if you ask what is the Imam's opinions with regards to this, there's 2 things to remember. Because this was very much part of society at the time, the Imams haven't said anything. And the fact that they were silent is something that was a sign of approval. Number 2, meaning that if they had an issue behind this, that children should be taught earlier on, that they would have said so. Number 2, the famous hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. The famous hadith that we all know of, the 7, 7 and 7, isn't it? The first 7 years, the middle 7 years, and the final 7 years of how we should engage in the tarbiyah of our children. This very much falls within the paradigm of that hadith. So you find that there is some form of agreement with regards to the Imams alayhim salam. The reason why scholars highlight this is because they say that what happened in the formative years of Islam led to what is known as the golden age of Islam. In the golden age of Islam, the amount of research and the amount of books that were being worked on and published has an effect even today. That many of us, when we study Islam, mostly in the Sunni tradition, they always refer back to the ancient books that were formed during the golden age of Islam. When you look at a child, part of his research, Dr. Assam, he says that one day a child came towards Malik ibn Anas. Malik ibn Anas, one of the 4 fuqaha of the Sunni tradition. A child at the age of 7 was brought to him, and they said that this child is only 7 years old, and he's memorized the entire Quran. His response, Malik ibn Anas, his response was not good. He somehow rebuked them, he reprimanded them. He said that a child should not be at a stage where he's memorized the Holy Quran at the age of 7, especially at the age of 7. He says, look, he's 7 years old, he's memorized the entire Quran, so technically he must have been 5 or so, yes, before he started. He said a child at the age of 5 should not be engaged in learning and memorizing the Holy Quran, because that is a stress that you're placing on the child, and that's a stress that they cannot handle. What it does is later on it causes either boredom or it causes a distaste towards the Holy Quran. It says when the child is mature, when he's able to sit formally in a class, that's when you teach him how to recite the Holy Quran. He says a child at the age of 5, they should be more engaged in entertainment. Let them play, let them explore, because playing and exploring helps in their psychological formation, it helps in their kinesthetic formation as well. So you have, this is a very popular opinion amongst the scholarly circle, that a child should not begin learning or memorizing the Holy Quran, especially at the age of 5. You find that what was important and what was highlighted here is that whenever as parents we should encourage our children to learn and memorize the Holy Quran, but we should go according to what they're capable of. If we were to impose on them or if we were to add stress on them, it could either add boredom or it could either cause boredom or cause a distaste towards the Holy Quran. We should go according to their capacity, see what they're capable of, and not push them as much as possible. As the years go by, they mature, they're able to comprehend better, they're able to understand better, and that's good for them. Slowly, steady wins the race. So the Imam begins this discussion. He says, تَعَلَّمُ الْقُرْآنِ فَإِنَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْحَدِيثِ. Learn the Holy Quran. And of course, there are ways of learning the Holy Quran. Number 2, he says, وَتَفَقَّهُ فِيهِ فَإِنَّهُ رَبِيعُ الْقُلُوبِ. And ponder upon its verses, because its verses have the power to revive the heart. Rabi' al-Qulub, it is the spring of the heart. It is the blossoming of the heart. Soon we're going to be entering the spring months, yes? We see all of these trees, they're dead. But then all of a sudden they will come back to life. That's exactly what happens with the heart when the heart engages in understanding the Holy Quran. How does one go about understanding the Holy Quran? And this is an ongoing debate, isn't it, amongst ourselves? We focus so much on recitation, tajweed, qira'ah, all of this tartil, but we don't focus on understanding. Within the Sunni tradition, it's memorization, memorization, memorization. We don't understand the Holy Quran. You've got hundreds, thousands of Huffaz of the Holy Quran who can recite the Holy Quran to you, but they don't have the focus of what they're reciting. So now the same discussion is happening within the Sunni circles as well. Should we focus on memorization or should we focus on understanding the Holy Quran? Within our circles, should we focus on recitation or should we focus on understanding? Well, these are two extremes. Why is it that we have to find a solution to one of the extremes with another extreme? جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Adopt a middle position where you focus on both. You focus on both recitation as well as understanding certain elements and certain words of the Holy Quran. Create a balance. Give importance to both sides. Don't feel that there is an obligation to pick one side or the other. There's always a middle position. What's interesting here, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. What's interesting here is that when you look at some of the opinions of the scholars, they say that one of the best ways to understand the Holy Quran is understanding the vocabs that have been used in the Holy Quran. You're not obligated to learn the Arabic language, but there are certain vocabs that are repeatedly used throughout the Holy Quran. Make it your own personal individual responsibility to pick out these vocabs, and many programs have been designed to facilitate this. Pick out the recurring vocabs, learn the Arabic behind it. Many of the vocabs appear to be synonymous in meaning, but they're not. Ayatollah Jawad Amuli has a favorable opinion here. He says that whenever you come across two words in the Holy Quran that appear to be same in meaning, these are the words of Allah. Allah never uses synonyms. There's always a difference between these words and why they're used. Whenever you pick out these words, you recognize what they mean and why Allah has used them and what intricate meaning you can derive from that particular verse. Beyond this, when you approach the Holy Quran, the Quran highlights itself. It says that the content of this book has different realities. And we've heard this before, that there are many different realities and intricacies behind the Holy Quran. For example, in the ayah, Hamim wal Kitab al Mubin, Inna ja'alnahu Qur'anan Arabiyya la'allakum ta'aqilun. We have made this book in Arabic so that you may jog your aql, so that you may utilize your aql to extract meanings from it. Can I go ahead and understand the Holy Quran ignoring the Arabic side from it? You can try, you won't get very far. That's the truth. We have to learn a little bit of Arabic in order to understand and extrapolate the deeper meanings of the Holy Quran. But this is a reality that's there within our hands, that the Quran has been made in Arabic, we have it in our hands, and that's a reality that's available to us. That's the access that we have towards the Holy Quran. In the following verse, it says, وَإِنَّهُ فِي أُمِّ الْكِتَابِ لَدَيْنَا. It is considered to be the mother of the books. It supersedes all of the heavenly books that has come before. Ladayna, it is with us. So within these two verses, Allah highlights that there are two realities of the Quran. One which is there within us, within our hands, and the second which is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Two realities. One with us, one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can imagine that between these two posts, there are many different variations of realities. That's why the Imam alayhi salam, again in Nahj al-Balagha, in one of the maxims, he comes and he says, وَإِنَّ الْقُرْآنَ ظَاهِرُهُ عَنِيقٌ وَبَاطِنُهُ عَمِيقٌ. He says, when you look at the apparent nature of the Quran, it's beautiful, it's appealing, it's attractive. You look at the words of the Quran and the amounts of calligraphy that we can derive from its words. It's beautiful. The mosques and the tiles and the artwork. Again, influenced by the writings of the Holy Quran is very, very beautiful. ظَاهِرُهُ عَنِيقٌ. The way it's recited as well, it's very beautiful. You know, in the recent years, the Christian tradition and the Jewish traditions have tried to recite their scriptures using a tune, Sawt al-Lahan, the way we recite the Holy Quran. And it's not the same, it doesn't hit the same. So again, the way the Quran is, the way it looks and the way it is recited, it's very, very appealing and very, very attractive. وَظَاهِرُهُ وَبَاطِنُهُ عَمِيقٌ. And the internal realities of the Holy Quran is deep as the oceans and the seas. How do we go about understanding the Holy Quran according to the Imam alayhi salam? The Imam mentions 3 stages or 3 different strategies. The first strategy is when a person makes it his personal responsibility to purify himself. You know, when you want to gain knowledge, knowledge is not just memorizing and reading and studying texts and whatnot. Sometimes knowledge is directly given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ilm, nur min Allah. It is the nur that Allah helps the person achieve, helps the person gain, and it permeates through the heart. When a person purifies himself, Allah facilitates it for him to be able to get knowledge. He makes the facilitation of getting knowledge very, very easy for such a person. And he mentions this within Nahj al-Balagha. He says, Kitab Allah tubsiruna bih. Kitab Allah tantaquna bih. Kitab Allah tasma'una bih. He says, the book of Allah, through it you should see things through the lens of the Quran. When you speak according to the Quran, according to the teachings of the Quran. And when you hear according to the teachings of the Quran. Whatever you do, make sure that every part and parcel of your life, every action, every word is in accordance to the teachings of the Holy Quran. This is the process of tazkiyat al-nafs. It's the process of self-refinement and self-purification. That when a person makes it his responsibility to gain proximity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will help him gain the knowledge that he's looking and he's yearning for. Elsewhere in the Holy Quran, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. There are those who are tahir, only then can they touch the Holy Quran. What is this in reference to? That I have to be in the state of tahara, wudu or ghusl just in order to touch the Holy Quran? It's one of the meanings, but it's not the only meaning. The higher the person achieves spiritual attainment, spiritual refinement, the greater access he has to the realities of the Holy Quran. But the step to initiate that is when we adhere ourselves to the authority and towards the teachings of Allah, refraining from all of that which is haram, adhering to that which is wajib. Beyond that, making a personal responsibility to abstain from the makruhat. That makes life difficult, and difficulty brings forth refinement, but also adhering to the mustahabbat. And when a person makes a responsibility, his personal responsibility to engage in such a way, slowly he's moving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you find that naturally this person will have a deeper insight towards the Holy Quran. Allama Tabatabai, rahmatullah alayh, tafsir, sahib tafsir al-Mizan, phenomenal book. He says that whenever I open the Quran, whenever I read the verses, I read and I learn something new. A person who has engaged in the tafsir of the Holy Quran still continues to learn and derive new meanings and new knowledge from the verses. The greater a person engages in spiritual refinement, the better the access he has towards the Holy Quran. And this is very difficult. No doubt it's very difficult. So what happens now? I'm not in a position to refine myself as fast as I would want to. What do? Here the Imam then comes forward and he says, then you refer to those who are capable of accessing the Holy Quran and you derive knowledge from them. One of the manifestations of that is when you refer to the Quran to give meaning to the other verses of the Holy Quran. وَيَنْتَقُ بَعَضَهُ بِبَعَضٍ. There are some parts of the Holy Quran that speaks for the other part. وَيَشْهَدُ بَعْضُهُ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. And there are certain parts of the Holy Quran, it testifies for other parts of the Holy Quran. The Quran speaks for itself, and the way it is, one verse speaks for the other speaks for the third, and so on and so forth. You know what's beautiful here? And this highlights the miraculous nature of the Holy Quran. The Quran is seen, it's envisaged as a book, compartmentalized into different chapters. You would think that these chapters are different, but they're not. Every verse of the Holy Quran, 6,000 plus verses of the Holy Quran, they're all interconnected, they're all interrelated, as if the entire book is a single narrative, it's a single narration in itself. Nothing can be separated, no part can be separated from each other. And it's a phenomenal procedure, this in itself. Tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran, when you engage in the tafsir of the Quran through the Holy Quran. You know, one of the things I've realized within our communities is that whenever we want to challenge something, whenever we want to be critical, we take a verse, we isolate that verse from the rest of the Quran, and we question certain practices that we have. That's a very shallow way of approaching the discussion. When you look at the scholarly circles, they approach the entire Quran to challenge whether a practice is deemed permissible or not. You take the examples of tawassul, shafa'ah, all of these different discussions that are popping up now. A verse is usually taken out of context, a verse is usually isolated from the rest of the Quran. You know, we as Muslims, we engage in this act, but look, it goes against this ayah of the Holy Quran. Well, that's a very narrow way of approaching the discussion in the first way. The thing is, the scholars, the ulama, what do? They take all of the verses that speak about the issue. And when you do that, when you collate all of the verses that speak about the issue, you realize that there is a model that has been delivered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you now see that this act that we engage in, it could be whatever act, does it fall within the model? If it does, فَبِحَا وَنِعْمَةً, we take it on board. If it doesn't fall within the model, then we disregard it. And a lot of the ahkam that we have, you'll find that in the apparent nature of it, it goes against the ayah of the Holy Quran. But the fuqaha, what do the fuqaha do? They take all of the verses that speak about the issue and they can recognize the model that Allah is delivering. And many of these conclusions, the ahkam, the halal and the haram that we have, it falls within that model. And likewise, many of the aqeedi practices that we engage with, it falls within the model. Bear that in mind. Tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran. Words of the Imam refer to the meanings of the Quran by using other verses. The third way, he says, refer to people who are capable of extracting meaning from the Holy Quran. And that's important as well. He says, بِهِمْ أُلِمَ الْكِتَابِ. There are certain individuals that the Quran has been recognized by them. The Quran has been known because of them. وَبِهِ أُلِمُوا. And the Quran has allowed them to be known. As in the Quran has given them knowledge. وَبِهِمْ قَامُوا الْكِتَابِ or قَامَ الْكِتَابِ. And through them the kitab of Allah has been established. وَبِهِ قَامُوا. And the Quran has allowed them to be established as well. So there are certain individuals, Allah has given them the authority to interact with the Holy Quran. The Imam says, refer to such individuals. When you refer to the Ahl al-Bayt, what does the Quran say? The Quran says, وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. They have gone through a process of purification, a thorough purification, where no remnant of desires, no remnants of rijs, no remnants of ugliness exists within their soul. The more purified a person is, the higher the reality he has access to the Holy Quran. Imagine the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam and the access that they have towards the Holy Quran. Number 3, the Imam alayhi salam goes on to say, وَاسْتَشْفُوا بِنُورِهِ فَإِنَّهُ شِفَاءُ الصُّدُورِ. And seek a cure from the Quran, because the Quran, seek a cure from the light of the Quran, because the Quran is a cure for the hearts. What type of a cure is the Quran? What type of a remedy does the Quran provide for us? Is it physical? The ulama explain, yes, it's physical. When you engage with the words of the Holy Quran, listening to the Holy Quran, it has the capacity to cure you on a physical level. It's one of the manifestations, one of the ways in which a person can be cured from his illness. One of the ways, not the only way, one of the ways. Including medicine, going to the doctors and so on and so forth, treatments and so on. Recitation and engaging with the Quran can also serve as a cure. And this has been proven by the ulama themselves using certain ayats and riwayats of the Ahlul Bayt. But can we limit it to that only? That the Quran is seen as a physical cure? No, the Quran is an intellectual cure. The Quran is a spiritual cure. The Quran is an emotional cure as well. On an intellectual level, you know, in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He does is He challenges mankind. We say that the Quran is a mu'jiz, isn't it? A mu'jiza, by definition, is a miracle that challenges the opposition. If you think I'm a liar, if you think that I have no weightiness behind my saying and my teachings, then here, do this. It's a challenge. Do something equivalent to it. The Quran operates in the same way, but on an intellectual level. It challenges mankind. Some of the statements is very, it's intellectually, it's quite weighty. I'll give you an example in Surah Al-Waqi'ah. A surah that we're all very much fond of and we're very much associated with. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تُمْنُونَ أَأَنْتُمْ تَخْلُقُونَهُ أَمْ نَحْنُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Allah says, look at your existence. You've come from the small drop. Have you created it or have we created it? You know how profound these two verses are? Deeply profound. In other words, Allah is saying, look at you, the creation of mankind. How have you come into existence? Have you created yourself or have we created you? Is there a third option? It's an intellectual discussion now. Is there a third option? If you believe that you've created yourself, well, that's batil because you can't come out of non-existence. You can't create something from non-existence. So mankind has not created themselves. It says, are we your creators? So if man hasn't created himself, then something or someone else has created man. Then you outline all of the different possibilities as to who creates man. And you go through them one by one. You realize that none of them are effective. The only solution, viable solution that we have is that Allah has created man. And you'll find these discussions within our Aqidah. When you study Aqaid, the way it's been formalized by the ulama, you realize, and you'll find these discussions quite rampant within the Aqaid discussions, you realize that when you go through all of the possibilities, none of the possibilities are strong enough for us to believe in them, except the final possibility that is that Allah is the creator of man. In the following verse, نَحْنُ قَدَّرْنَا بَيْنَكُمُ الْمَوْتَ وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَسْبُوقِينَ. Let's assume that you are the ones who created yourself. If you believe that you have the power to create yourself, then where do you stand in front of maut? Where do you stand in front of death? Can anyone escape the reality of death? It's a very powerful intellectual discussion that's taking place here. Then he speaks about water. He says, أَفَرَيْتُمُ الْمَاءَ الَّذِي تَشْرَبُونَ. Have you seen the water that you drink? Who brings it down from the clouds? Have you seen the fire that you kindle and that you use? Who allows the fire to emanate from the trees? Water and fire are two very basic elements, yet they're vital to our existence. Not only is Allah bringing forth His wujudiyah, His bringing forth His existence and His proving His existence, but His challenging mankind that some of the basic necessities that we're very much in need of, it's not even in our hands. Look how weak we are as human beings. So from an intellectual level, the Quran engages with the aql, the Quran engages with the intelligence of the human being. And a person with a sound intelligence will recognize this, and he will recognize the authority of the Holy Quran. Secondly, on a spiritual level, the Quran engages with the human being on a spiritual level. How so? Allah creates a standard. And Allah says that the world does not operate just on a material level. But behind everything that exists physically, there is a spiritual reality behind it. تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمُلْكِ. In his hands is the authority of the mulk. فَسُبْحَانَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمَلَكُوتِ. Again, in his authority is what is known as malakut. What's the difference between mulk and malakut? Mulk is in reference to the world that is seen. Malakut is in reference to the world that is unseen. Both of which are under his dominion. It's under his authority. Beyond this, behind every physical thing, there is a spiritual reality. That's why within the fields of akhlaq, what do we say? We say that our actions may not have necessarily big, significant physical ramifications, but it does have on a spiritual level. That's why the smallest of sins can be deadly. Why? On a spiritual level. And when sins accumulate, it affects the spirituality of the human being. When it comes to these physical realities, the rock, the stone, the grains of the sands, the bricks and the paint, everything that is physical, يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Everything engages with the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It glorifies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's one verse in particular, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ. He says, there is not a single entity in this universe, in this existence, that does not engage in the tasbih of Allah. Everything engages in the tasbih of Allah, but you, the human being, you cannot recognize that tasbih. You're not able to understand their way of performance of tasbih. We're limited. So the Quran highlights that on a spiritual level, everything performs the tasbih of Allah, whereas we see a different reality on a physical level. When we commit sins, the sin of arrogance, the sin of ego, the sin of jealousy, it affects the heart. It affects the spiritual heart and the spiritual nature of the human being. To the extent that the heart begins to slowly harden. And when the heart hardens, you find that a person will very much move away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then the ayah of the Quran explains, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. That if this Quran was to be sent down and revealed on a mountain, you would see this mountain explode into very small, fine particles. Physically, no. We're talking about the spiritual power of the Holy Quran. If the Quran has the capacity to destroy the rocks of the mountain and to render it into small, fine particles, imagine the hardness of the heart and the power that the Quran has on the hardness of the heart. That's why the ulama collectively, they've come forward and they say that when you feel that you're desensitized to many of the things around you, refer and engage with the Holy Quran, because the Quran has the power to undo all of these effects. On an emotional level, the Quran is a healing as well. We all go through different trials and difficulties in life. And many of them can be very, very painful. Our difficulties in relation to the Holy Prophet of Islam is nothing. Let's be honest. The trials and the tribulations that he went through, it's of a different level. It's of a different caliber. Yet when things got very difficult for him, Allah would reveal to him the stories of the prophets that had come before. And he would say, مَا نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. We have now given comfort to your heart. We have strengthened your heart through their narratives, through their narrations. Go and refer back to how people used to live before. When you refer to, for example, the story of Nabi Adam alayhi salam, how he lost his son, how he was, for example, placed on this earth. When you refer to the story of Nabi Ibrahim, how he had to leave his wife in a deserted land, in a barren land, without support, without any help, without any aid. How he had to sacrifice his son. When you speak about Nabi Yusuf, and how his brothers betrayed him. You know, within a family circle, the least we expect is that our brothers should have our back. That there is some support within that family framework. Yet his brothers abandoned him, they threw him in a well. He was taken as a slave, he was imprisoned for many years. One trial after another. When you look at Nabi Yaqub, he cried and cried until his eyes went blind. Nabi Yunus when he was in the belly of the whale. When you look at, for example, the Holy Prophet and how he went through all of the different trials and tribulations, being abused, persecuted, and so on and so forth, losing his uncle, losing his wife. In certain times, the only person he could refer to was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you look at the mother of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, having to abandon the baby, emotionally that could break a human being. And she was forced to place Nabi Musa in a taboot, in a small cradle, and just let it go down the river. Yet for them to turn to Allah and seek guidance and help from Allah, that's a lesson for us as well. That whenever we interact with these stories, we should resonate it in our lives. We should resonate with these stories. Allow it to solidify our heart, to give us hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of our affairs. And He can change many of our affairs if we develop a relationship with Him. And this solidifies the idea that far greater people have come before us, who have gone through far more worse situations than we are going through within our lives. And yet at the end, they would always turn to Allah and seek help from Allah. And the final advice of the Imam alayhi salam, he says, engage وَأَحْسِنُ التِّلَاوَةَ فَإِنَّهُ أَنْفَأُ الْقَصَصِ. Engage in the tilawah of the Quran, for it is the best of narrations. يَتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ. Through the process of tilawah, he was able to nurture and purify the Quraysh of Mecca. And the whole concept of tilawat al-Quran, qira'at al-Quran, is not something that should be underestimated. There's a very interesting ayah, and I'll end with this. Very interesting ayah. Allah says, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْقَاسِيَةِ قُلُوبُهُم مِّن ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. That a person goes through the process of hardening of the heart by the remembrance of Allah. How does that make sense? That when you engage in the dhikr of Allah, it hardens the heart. When you engage with the ayat of the Holy Quran, when you engage with the Quran, it hardens the heart. How does that work? When we approach the Quran, it should be with the intention that we want to seek benefit from the Quran. One day, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was walking in the streets of Kufa with Kumail ibn Ziyad al-Nakha'i. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As he's walking in the streets of Kufa, it's dark, it's nighttime. They came across a house, and the house was engaged. There was a person in the house, and he was reciting the Quran. Powerful voice, very eloquent. Kumail stops, and he begins to listen. Imam says, let's move on. He says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, beautiful voice. Sometimes when we come across something like that, we stop and we listen for a while, and then we move on. The Imam says to him, Kumail, remember this moment, because the time will come in the near future, and I'll remind you of this particular incident, this thing that we're going through now. So, okay, fine. In the battle of Naharwan, the Imam is walking in the battlefield. Bodies of the deceased, the martyrs, and the enemies, they're all there. He comes across one body. He says, Kumail, come. He says, do you see this body here? He says, yes. He says, do you know who this person is? He says, tell me. He says, this is the person that used to recite the Quran in the darkest hours of the night. With that beautiful voice, you stopped, you started to listen to him. He was fighting against us in Naharwan. Engagement with the Quran begins with the intention that you want to seek benefit from it. Otherwise, we have all of these people in the world who turn towards the Holy Quran to try and find contradictions with it, to try and belittle the Muslims, to try and regress the Islamic traditions, and so on and so forth. Our engagement with the Holy Quran begins first wanting to benefit from it, to allow the teachings enter our hearts, to change our lives for the better. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this auspicious night to forgive our sins, to enhance our relationship with the Holy Quran, and to, of course, mold our lives with the practical teachings of the Imam alayhi salam. وآخر دعوانا عن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Ahsan Shaykh. Bal Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Saturday, 18th of February 2023, eve of 27th of Rajab 1444. Sunday, 19th of February, Fajr Salah will be prayed at 6:30 a.m., followed by lecture by Maulana Sayyid Qalbi Abbas and breakfast niyaz. Weekdays Zohrain Salah is prayed at our center at Awal Waqt, followed by lunch, light lunch. All are encouraged to attend and take part. Thursday, 23rd of February is the Wiladat Eve of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali. The program will start at 8 p.m. with Quran lecture by Shaykh Shahnawaz. Saturday, Ladies Yad team presents Jashin-e-Maulud to celebrate the Khushalis of the Holy Household alayhi salam on Thursday, 16th of March, parallel to the main Gents program. Syria and Turkey Earthquake Emergency Fund is now open. Please donate generously at the Treasury desk, both in the ladies and the gents. YDD are now enrolling boys and girls aged 5 years to 14 years for recitation of 3 short du'as and dua iftitah in the month of Ramadan. To register for auditions, please email ydd@hujjat.org. The Hujjat membership subscription for the year 2023 is now due. You can pay either online or at the treasurer's desk. The utility prices are extremely high. Please help us by donating towards our general fund. Bal Muhammadin wa Ali Muhammad salawat. Let us recite 5 times Amma Yujibul for those who are not well, especially Zera Megji, who is in critical condition in Dar es Salaam. One Momin Bai is critical ill here in London. 2 Mominas are also ill in London as well. And one Momin Bai is critically ill in America. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amman yujibul mustarra iza da'ahu wa yakshifus su. 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 Al-Fatih Shafai Marza. We shall now have a presentation from Birmingham Jamaat. Please watch the video. Bal Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat.
Birmingham Jamaat elders formed this Jamaat with a vision, with a dream.
I think Birmingham, in one way, is looking towards its future. We have now acquired a lot of pieces of land across the footprint here. So the Birmingham project has been in the making for quite some time. We initially started with the plans for the Ghusl Khana, and part of the Ghusl Khana was to have a family room where the family could grieve in privacy. We have managed to deliver that. We also managed to deliver the mezzanine floor where we needed the extra space in the Sayyidah Zainab building. What we're embarking on now is the new phase for the mosque and the Imam Bara. The new project will deliver on various fronts. First of all, the size of the halls and the namaz facilities are going to be just over twice the size of what we had previously. We're going to have facilities for those with special needs, disabled toilets and changing facilities. We're also going to have mini moment rooms in the ladies and the gents. And finally, the most important, the kitchen is going to be at least 3 times the size with a serving kitchen on the first floor.
So the project currently stands at a cost of 7.2 million. We have enough for the first phase, and the first phase is going to last approximately 12 months, and that first phase is about 2.4 million. And we have embarked on the start of that. The second phase starts about 12 months after the first phase commences, and the second phase will be requiring approximately 2.5 million pounds.
I'm excited to see that this project includes a library which caters to the needs of our community members. Having a library as a part of this project gives our community members something to look forward to, something exciting to look forward to.
The current project AIC is so important to this, our madrasa, our loving madrasa, is because we are lacking space for accommodating all our children. We have a lot of applications who are on the waiting list, and we really need to get these children on madrasa books. Once we have the space, we will be able to accommodate all the children of our community, enroll them all on our madrasa, and make our madrasa a real community madrasa.
I think we need this project because we need to really invest in our future generations. We need to make our mosque attractive. We need to make our facilities top notch. We need to have stuff for sports. We need to have an active social life within the mosque as well. And it needs to be fit for purpose. Our old center needed a big refresh. This huge investment, inshallah, will give us plenty of opportunity to keep giving great service for generations to come, inshallah.
Sports is really important in helping our kids, be better Muslims. Things like fair play, Islam teaches us to be fair. The facilities that we have at the moment, unfortunately, is just not enough for us.
The benefit of having our own sports center is, number one, cost. It provides a better alternative, and we can pass on those savings to our young members. The second is that it's a safe environment that kids can come in and that parents can come to, and parents can send their children to, knowing that their kids are in a safe and controlled environment. And the third is the fact that they're just around the corner from the mosque, and it builds and harnesses that spiritual aspect as well. It enables our young members to create strong bonds amongst themselves, which last a lifetime, and also builds up the foundations for a stronger community.
So what we are looking for is a constant income stream, direct debits, one-off contributions, whatever you can manage, whether it's £1, whether it's £10 a month.
But alongside that, promoting this to your friends and family, getting the word out there, volunteering your time as well. These are all ways that you can play a part.
We all want to have a beautiful house. We want to have a beautiful shopping center. Why not dream of having a beautiful Islamic center? Let's do it. There are so many religious organizations in this beautiful city of Birmingham. Why not have an excellent center for the lovers and followers of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman?
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Please welcome Brother Abbas Ali Bandali for the Qasida, Bal Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, Salawat.
Inshallah, we'll start with a qasida in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and then I'll be joined with my brother to recite a naat in honor of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa awli Muhammad. Ali ke noor ka sadka दिखाई देता है अली के नूर का सदका दिखाई देता है
خدا کے گھر میں اجالا دکھائی دیتا ہے، علی کے نور کا صدقہ دکھائی دیتا ہے۔ مزاج نیج بلاغہ ہے آیتوں جیسا، مزاج نیج بلاغہ ہے آیتوں جیسا، کلام یہ بھی خدا کا دکھائی دیتا ہے۔ علی کے نور کا صدقہ دکھائی دیتا ہے۔ اور نصیری کہتے ہیں معبود میرے مولا کو، نصیری کہتے ہیں معبود میرے مولا کو، عجیب جھوٹ ہے سچا دکھائی دیتا ہے، علی کے نور کا صدقہ دکھائی دیتا ہے۔ علی امام منستوں منم غلام علی، علی امام منستوں منم غلام علی، ہر ایک نبی یہی کہتا دکھائی دیتا ہے۔ مجھے زمین پہ کچھ بھی نظر نہیں آتا، مجھے زمین پہ کچھ بھی نظر نہیں آتا، فقط حسین کا سجدہ دکھائی دیتا ہے، علی کے نور کا صدقہ دکھائی دیتا ہے۔ کمال قدرت معبود ہے میرا باس، کمال قدرت معبود ہے میرا باس، علی کو بھی یہ علی سا دکھائی دیتا ہے، علی کے نور کا صدقہ دکھائی دیتا ہے۔ نجف ہے میر تکلم کا طور اے موسیٰ، نجف ہے میر تکلم کا طور اے موسیٰ، اسے یہیں پہ وہ جلوہ دکھائی دیتا ہے علی کے نور کا صدقہ دکھائی دیتا ہے. محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. کیوں کرنا میرے دل میں ہو الفت رسول کی، الفت رسول کی. کیوں کرنا میرے دل میں ہو الفت رسول کی، کیوں کرنا میرے دل میں ہو الفت رسول کی. جنت میں لے کے جائے گی، جنت میں لے کے جائے گی، جنت میں لے کے جائے گی چاہت رسول کی. ہاں جنت میں لے کے جائے گی چاہت رسول کی، چاہت رسول کی. چلتا ہوں میں بھی قافلے والوں رکو ذرا، چلتا ہوں میں بھی قافلے والوں رکو ذرا. ملنے دو بس مجھے بھی، ملنے دو بس مجھے بھی اجازت رسول کی. ہاں جنت میں لے کے جائے گی چاہت رسول کی، چاہت رسول کی. سرکار نے بلا کے مدینہ دکھا دیا، سرکار نے بلا کے مدینہ دکھا دیا. ہوگی مجھے نصیب، ہوگی مجھے نصیب شفاعت رسول کی. ہاں جنت میں لے کے جائے گی چاہت رسول کی. یا علی چاہت رسول کی. یا رب دکھا دے آج کے شب جلوائے حبیب، یا رب دکھا دے آج کی شب جلوائے حبیب. ایک بار تو عطا ہو، ایک بار دو عطا ہو، ایک بار تو عطا ہو زیارت رسول کی. ہاں جنت میں لے کے جائے گی چاہت رسول کی، چاہت رسول کی. پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
توجہ زیارت.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر الأهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء وبعيد المدى، السلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأسر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر وظهور الأمر ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Brothers, you are requested to please be seated so the volunteers can serve the tea and tabarruk. Ahsant.